Well, good morning, everyone. And every day we rise, it's a great day to be alive. And welcome to Portsmouth Coffee Talks morning show. Slim Overton. And we have a special guest with us this morning. But before we get started, I want to introduce the guest, our host and moderator, Thomas the Colonel Chapman. Good morning, Colonel. And of course, he, along with co-host Leah Drake Stitt. Good morning, Leah. Okay, and our special guest is James Patrick Board, who's president of the Portsmouth Chapter of the NAACP. And let me tell you about this brother. I saw him Saturday night at an event for Senator Louise Lucas. They renamed the street near the casino after her, and they had a renaming earlier that day, Saturday, and then that night they had an event. And Mr. Board was one of the speakers at that event, and he gave a fiery speech and took me back to the civil rights days. Yes, and we had an opening for a guest, and usually when we have an open for a guest and it's Saturday or Sunday, we just go with the host. So when I saw him, I said, let me contact him because he's been on the show several times and never has turned us down if he wasn't busy. And he was glad to be a part of the show. He just had to check his schedule, so he confirmed it yesterday, and here he is, James Patrick Board. And Colonel, before you go, Colonel, if you're watching on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, please like, subscribe, comment, and share with other people, your family, friends, associates, and even some of your enemies. They might want to need to see this too. And if you're watching on YouTube, our YouTube pages, please like and make your comments. And this is something where you can be involved as a viewer. So we have comments or questions for Mr. Board. So please chime in. Okay, Colonel.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. And
good morning.
You, James.
Good morning.
Board, yes. So I'll start off. Before I give you your chances to talk, I will give you a little history lesson in my eyes, is saying that, yes, ever since the Civil War ended, I will say the other side has not wanted an end. It's almost we've been at an armistice, meaning guns were put back and they've been working slowly to chip away that progress. Open warfare started at the election of Barack Obama, where they decided, the GOP and half of America decided, yes, we want our country back. And they have a new general that is marching throughout the South and through Midwest and is trying to take over this country. And his name is who? Donald Trump. He is the general of the Confederacy. Mm-hmm. And so I'm making analogies here to paint this picture. So one of his lieutenants, we have a Confederate governor here, who and has done everything to turn back the tide of progress in the turn back the progress of the past, and also to return us to the past. When they say we want our country back, meaning they want to take it back to the 40s and 50s, to where women, they want to go back so far women didn't have the right to vote, because they've already turned back their piece that they don't have the rights over their own body for almost half of America. They want to take our rights to vote, because that's the meaning minorities' rights to vote, because they've made it more difficult to vote across the entire nation. And why is this? Because one, the only power you have is the ballot. And power is to go down and pull that lever at the ballot box, which is the most dangerous weapon that they perceive that we have. And they know that is because we can keep them out of power. But what do? There's a large swath of people that don't vote, because only, say, at best 40% of the population votes. And even for us, there are some towns and municipalities and across the country that don't even vote at the 40% clip. But then they're the first ones that go out and march. And I've always said, and this is my opinion, marching don't do jack if you don't follow it up by going down to the polls and making people accountable. Now I would give you my thoughts. I will turn it over to you, James. And what say you?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Colonel, for that. And good morning, Bro Overton, Leah. Thank you all for having me this morning. I'm honored always to be on. It's certainly a privilege to be on with the three of you for sure. I would agree with you, Colonel. I think there is a move to take us back. I would have a slightly different opinion about Donald Trump's role. Most movements, they hide their leaders. Right. When there's a good movement that's successful, they never let their leader be known, because they want to make sure that person is always protected. And I would say in this, the ongoing racist, bigoted movement that existed in America from its inception is still certainly alive and well in this country. But the leaders of it are behind the scenes, right? Donald Trump is kind of like just the lightning rod that distracts us. Like, for my mom's favorite movie is The Wizard of Oz, and we know in Wizard of Oz, you had, when they went up to the wizard, it was this big grand face, right? Big grand person. Trump is that big grand person. But when you pull back the curtain, the real leaders are the authors of the 2025 plan. The people that they don't want you to see. That way they can act clandestinely. They can put in laws and regulations while you're focused on the wizard, on Trump. Meanwhile, they're behind the scenes, focused on policy, focusing on the court, where they are getting a lot of court appointments. And this is what they did when Trump was in office. Trump was making all the noise, but quietly they were putting judges on the bench that have a lasting impact on civil rights and on the Black community that wasn't being focused on. So one of the things in the NAACP we were trying to do and still do is trying to highlight, trying to be call us Toto, where we go behind the scenes and pull that curtain back and show you the true individuals who are behind, not just the grand person up front. So Trump certainly is what he is, and we know what he is. He's always been that way. And he's certainly someone that perpetuates racism and bigotry in his position. But I would say, we got to make sure we have that Toto spirit to reveal the real people behind the movement.
That is so true, because even, like I say, even behind the general, you have all the, what I say, the field grade general, which is Trump. You have all the colonels, which actually put policies on, and Heritage Foundation is one, and then you have those in Congress, like Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, Tim Scott, and the other Scott, Rick Scott down there in Florida, and all the rest of the Senate members, and Jan Kiggins, who's another, under rank, will say she's another lieutenant under all this, and all in Congress putting those policies together. But if you look at it, saying those members that have run, what have they done for America? And I'll use Jan Kiggins. What has she? She's on record, on not record, but she is on TV saying she passed a bill to put 20,000 border agents on the border, which is never got. They passed a bunch of bills that never got through the Senate because they were so loaded down with right-wing policies and things that were negative for America. They just show bills. So when you boil it down, what has she done? Zip. And what is she going to do? Zip. Other than to fool you. And then she has some sheriff that she's embarked that soon as the election is over, she won't even give him a call. And I'm not even sure if he really exists. So they want to go back to this shining thing of law and order. And I think you saw it over the weekend during his last speech. General Trump, who wants to be the dictator, will be the dictator elected, saying he's going to allow. He says, "I wish all the policemen will have a day of law and order," meaning they can just go through all of our communities and purge everything. And there are no laws protecting us. Search behavior, wipe it out the door. All that autocratic and dictatorship ideas are starting to spill over. And a lot of this stuff is in Project 2025. And they're slipping up. And actually, what you say, those policies are coming to light, and it's written down on paper. But we don't, there are some in our country that saying, no, this can't happen. You talk about the courts. The courts will not be able to solve it or to save us next time, because as a dictator, he don't care about the courts.
Right. And see, and you mentioned this. I mean, some people, you mentioned some of those conservatives, but people like Jim DeMint. Jim DeMint was a senator from South Carolina before Tim Scott, and matter of fact, he left the Senate and then went to control the Heritage Foundation, and a lot of those things he was embedding while he was actually in the United States Senate. And so that move has been going on for a while underground, for sure. And that's why it was so shocking that, they had put it actually on paper. But one of the things that's super important to the civil rights community is holding. Now, let me say this when I say it. We are for good officers and we support good police officers. Our community needs those officers for sure. But we do have road police officers that should be totally removed and be held accountable for actions that they do when they break the law that results in, a lot of times in our community, the loss of life. One of the things in the part of 2025 plan is immunity, absolute immunity for law enforcement officials. And that would literally erase so much work that NAACP and so many other organizations have worked on. Can you imagine in some of these scenarios where our people lost their lives and they have absolute immunity? I mean, that is that in and of itself should just enrage our community to a point to where we need to be focused on what's going on and then making our voices heard through the ballot and through the streets. So I totally agree with you. It's a challenging time for sure.
And I'm a combat vet, and I will tell you, I feel there's a lot of times I feel safer in Iraq than I do in my own country. I really do. When I was down in Georgia, and I've told this story before, down at Fort Stewart, when I got assigned down there, and Fort Stewart, which is the home of a division This is between 7,000 to 10,000 troops. I was the only colonel, black colonel on garrison. The only one. And I thought this would never happen. And the animus there that why is he here? And it really hit to me when I was going through the receiving line when the 2-star and his staff was lined up and was going shaking hand, all the at his Christmas ball kind of thing, and coming through, and I could see in his staff that his operations guy looked at me, and I could see what he really wanted to say is, how did he get here? How did he get here? Now, I proved them all wrong within my time down there, and I got acceptance, especially with the 2-star. And the way I got around with him is I got through, with some of the dependents, because, I'm a healthcare provider, nurse, and stuff like that. And that is something that they needed. But in these times, why should I have to go through that? Or when I was in Kentucky and I've been stopped so many times driving while black until I get pulled over, and then before I can pull out my driver's license, I pull out my ID card, and the game changes once they say, "Oh, he's a colonel. He knows what he's doing." It's automatically, it's a mistake why I pulled you over, or they make up some, "Oh, you crossed over the white line." Yes, and so without that protection and stuff like that, you just never know how things will change. Well, could turn out. Yeah, it could be different. And so, or when I go through, say, in our cities here in the Tidewater area, depending on who stops me, it could be the last day that I see. So I get in my car, and I given my son and my kids the talk, saying, when you get in your car, before you do a combat check, meaning you walk around the car, make sure all the lights and your brake lights are working, because you could lose your life for a $5 brake light.
That's right.
And that's right. Pull over, you turn your phone on, put your hands on the wheel, and you call 911. Well, actually, you notify me and let you know what happened, where you're at. And you call 911, and you ask for a desk sergeant, and you tell them you fear for your life. Even for I want somebody else there as a witness.
Colonel, can I ask a quick question, Colonel?
Yes.
Mr. Boyd, a lot of times, and as we talk about the city of Portsmouth, a lot of times we become kind of complacent, if our surroundings look like everything is going out all right. What are some of the concerning issues that you've seen as NAACP president that we in the city of Portsmouth are facing these days?
Absolutely. And yeah, for sure. We great question, Overton. The number one challenge right now that I know we all know is gun violence in our city. And I mean, even this the other day, where we had, I believe, an incident where 4 people were involved in violence in our city. And it's really hard. And it's a moment of transparency right now. You do a lot of work. There's a lot of organizations in our city that are doing a lot of work that are amazing and really working hard to try to address the situation. But then you see, like, the next day you'll do something, and the following day there's yet another person shot, and then another person shot, and sometimes, a lot of times, we're seeing it involves young people in our city, right? People under the age of 20, on the age of 18, sometimes on the age of 15, where they've been involved in activity. And I think sometimes it happens often that you kind of get numb to it, right? You kind of get to where it's like, oh yeah, I remember some year. I mean, I haven't been president I've been in there for a while now when I think about it, but I remember back in 2015, 2016, even then, when somebody was shot, it was, a big awakening around it. But it seems now, in our city, when gun violence is because in some cases, we've fallen numb to it, and we got to awaken ourselves on that issue, because it's so many of our people in our community, especially in the Black community, are suffering behind it. And it has to be an all-inclusive approach. It can't just be government. It just can't just be community. It has to be government and community. And when both of us come together and focus on real solutions, it will help to resolve it. And I know the police chief, we have a very good police chief, has been out there trying to, be very vulnerable about what he's able to do and calling on community to come in and partner with him. But we've got to make sure that we're focused on that issue, because I don't think the solution is more police officers in a lot of cases. It's more mentors, right? Well, the police department can only do but so much, right? But while they're policing community, we have to make sure that we're addressing the nucleus of the issue, which is socioeconomic conditions have driven this, right? A lack of attention to people who've been crying out for years and generations, a lack of resources, a lack of options, jobs, opportunity, so that people feel like there's hope beyond turning to certain environments that lead to gun violence. So I would say that's obviously one of the issues that is pressing in our city right now, amongst a host of things that we need to make sure gets a lot more attention.
And one other thing, Colonel, before you go back, this Saturday I was at the Fishbowl Parade, and that parade I saw a lot of different groups, youth groups, marching in that group, and I think everybody that was there, that was kind of encouraging to see all these. We don't always see what's going on there. We hear about what you just talked about, the gun violence, which is a very serious thing, but we don't hear about it. And
Right.
It gives you kind of hope that, because that's where it's going to start with that generation. And it's a lot of
Yes.
groups, a lot of people out here doing a lot of good things. How effective do you think these groups are going to be? Because people can't expect something overnight, but good change is always, it takes a while. It's a long-term game, and starting with the youth, that's why it's more effective. But that was encouraging to see that. But how effective do you think these groups are and will be as it relates to our future?
Absolutely. That's a good point, Brother Overton, because it's so much hope in our city, and it's so much, we do, and I say this to a lot of people in different cities. We do family better than any other city. It is, I say, Portsmouth is the biggest small city that you could ever live in, right? It's a place, I've said it before. I'll never forget I first became president of NAACP, and I went to a church and I said, hey, my name is James Boyd, I'm president of NAACP, and it was crickets. Nobody cared, right? But when I kept going and I said, I'm James Boyd, and my grandmother is Velma that lives in Prentice Park on Evergreen Street, everybody said, oh yeah, okay, yeah, we know who you are, okay, you cool, that's just how we are. And so, and I said that to say, to support your statement that there's so much hope in our city, even though we have a lot of challenges. There's so much hope, even with the younger generation, and they are focused on issues. One of the things that we're doing in this election cycle is trying to focus on new voters that have just recently turned 18 and they're eligible to vote now. And we have a group that we're working with, and they came to me and they said, James, we want to get people registered, but we want to get people registered and informed, right? In our age range. Just that, they say, a lot of us can get registered, but we really don't know the issue. We don't know the challenges. We want to be a part of that process, part of that solution. So you're right that they are going to be the nucleus of how we can get to solving these issues. But like you said, it won't happen overnight. It's going to take continuation. And I think that's the most opportunity we have in our community is sustainability. Even if you take like the civil rights movement in the 60s, people talk often about the tail end of the civil rights movement, but that thing started years before, where they had to sustain a movement. And you think about things like the Montgomery bus boycott, where they were able to sustain certain things. And so I think that's our opportunity. We have to be able to sustain progress meaning it won't happen overnight, but gradually, like Dr. King said, the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Mm-hmm. And so eventually, right now, we have to get to the bend, but we have to get it to where everybody's at the table. Mm-hmm. And here's another point, and then I'll get off this point, but we have to stop being so isolated in what we're doing, right? Mm-hmm. Why would the NAACP start a gun violence program when there's organizations out there right now that are doing the work that we can just go and support, mm-hmm. right? How we can undergird. And sometimes I think we focus on having our name on something. You know what I mean? Okay, exactly. We got to have this organization has to be out front. Well, no, we don't have to be out front on the issue. There's already organizations that we can support and undergird and be there with them. That way we don't have 20 organizations focused on one thing, mm-hmm. but then not being effective 20 different ways when we all could come together and be effective on one. And so I think that's the challenge that we have is let's come together because we all are focused on the issue. Doesn't matter whose name on it, whose name's on it, who's leading it. Let's just be effective. And I think that's when we start getting to real progress.
Thanks, Colonel, for letting me get that in. Even though I write down stuff, sometimes I forget. And at the end of the show, I say, oh, man, I didn't get that in. So thanks for letting me get that in. Sometimes I got to get it in when it fits in up here. Thanks, Colonel.
Yeah. Before I let Leah get in there, because I know she's ready to get in, but I'll go back to when you talk about the more police, because one, some cities will say more police could end up having a police state. So you have to look at what police you're bringing in. I've always harped on what your police force looks like in the environment and the culture that you bring in, and especially if they look more like this populace that they're serving and right. do those and where you recruit them from is a big piece. But you also talked about some of the structural problems that we have under the overall problems of gun violence and everything that ails society. You talked about the lack of jobs, but a lack of good paying jobs. That's right. And then, so then you go back to saying, look at the anti-union aspects of Project 2025, and people don't understand that unions has the benefits of pensions, higher wages and benefits and all that what comes with it. And it's a ticket to the middle class. And then lack of education, income, and we talked about all in opportunities lead to all the ills that we have. So it also equals out to now we're in the election period. And then so saying that and the power of the ballot. So as the president of the Portsmouth NAACP, could you say who are y'all endorsing and then why for the candidates? So people want to know, okay, I got the endorsement, but why? That's the secondary question.
Gotcha. Yeah, for sure. So the NAACP is a nonpartisan organization. So we don't endorse candidates or parties. We really more endorse issues. Mm-hmm. We are not an organization where we endorse candidates per se, but like our CEO said, we may not endorse candidates, and we may not do the partisan politics, but we still are political as hell, right? So, we have issues that we certainly endorse in the community, like unions. The opportunity for employees to unionize should be a fundamental right in this country, and it should be a right even in this city. And, I think it was almost 3 years ago where this question came up, where the General Assembly allowed cities to make the decision whether they were going to allow their city workers to be a part of a union. And we said then that it was super important and that we thought it was vital to fairness, equity, and equality, because a lot of people don't understand the power of unions. Most of the safeguards that workers have, the improvement in quality of life, the improvement in work conditions, all these things came from union work. And when you have the presence of union, you have the opportunity for employees to be able to improve and give suggestions on how, and accountability on, improving their quality of life that they deserve in a lot of cases. And so, we said it then, and council made a decision that we totally disagree with, that to not allow unions to their employees to unionize at that time. And because they were, some noted, well, our city manager is working with them currently. We know that entities a lot of times improve on their own, or it's so small progress that it takes generations for us to get to real sustainable living wages and quality of life. And so, we said then that, we ought to be able to have employees be a part of a union, as long as that union is equitable and fair for all employees. Because one of the challenges that we see in a lot of cases is you have even racism and discrimination within unions. And we have to make sure that we address that and be open and real about that, and then move forward to make sure that all employees have the ability to participate in the union, regardless of the color of their skin, and be fairly treated. So I absolutely agree that there's issues that are out here that, from the NAACP's perspective, we endorse those issues, not particular candidates, because we're a nonpartisan organization.
So when a candidate says, I've been endorsed by your organization, that is a mistruth.
That we get that sometimes, and that would be incorrect. Now, you have candidates that are members of the NAACP.
Right.
A lot of times they'll say, I'm a member, which is totally fine. We definitely want to make sure,
but not an endorsement.
Right, but not an endorsement. You got it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what most of them show, is that they have membership with the organization, as opposed to being endorsed by the organization. Because I know that everybody out there who's running know that the NAACP does not endorse a candidate. So, so I'm sure that it means that they have membership there, lifetime membership.
Yes.
But James, I'm just so proud of the things that you're doing, to see that you, as a young man out of IC Norcom High School, who has taken on this challenge. And I'm glad to see that you're focusing on our youth, because that's where the transition has to that's where the change has to start, with our youth, and getting them engaged and getting them registered. And then not only getting them registered, but like teaching them, sharing with them information, so they can be aware of voters in this area. I'm just so happy to tell you that the AKAs joined with IC Norcom Alumni Association, and they were able to register over 50 youth at IC Norcom High School. That becomes the part for us to talk to our kids and to share with them information, so that they will be informed voters. So what are we doing out here at NAACP? Like you say, joining with other organizations. Not only do our youth need to be informed voters, we have a lot of adults who need to be informed voters. There's a lot of people who call me and say, well, who should I vote for? Come on, you've got to do the research as to who's running. So what organizations are coming together to inform the voters? We used to do that back in the day. Not only did we do registration, we did voter information. What are we doing as far as getting out voter information to the public?
Absolutely, good point. And Leah, you mentioned the AKAs, and certainly the AKAs, the Deltas, all of Divine Nine have been amazing with being a part of this election season. We recently partnered with PRHA and the Portsmouth Deltas with an event at Lexington Apartments, and where we had voter registration going on, but also phone banking. And through the NAACP, we were able to conduct phone banking, and we called over 350 people who were actually registered to make sure that they were voting. And you won't believe the amount of feedback we got from people of saying, hey, one person said, I'm registered to vote, but I'm not going to vote because I'm in God's army, and so that means that I'm just focused on being in God's army. We had to tell her, like, listen, we love the fact that you're in God's army, absolutely, for sure, but while you're still on earth, we need you to vote. Right, because I know eventually it'll be over on the side, but we need you to vote. And then also just on issues, a lot of people, like you said, they may not know who to vote for. And certainly, as I said earlier to the Colonel, that we don't endorse candidates, but we certainly can inform them on issues and where the NAACP stands on issues, and then they can make an informed decision on who they want to vote for based upon, where we've revealed what certain candidates stand on issues, right? And so that's super important. But as you said, getting out there, we used to do it all the time, membership breakfasts and informing people. And that's the challenge that I put forward to the branch is in this season, and actually this came from our national office, we got an email saying, do whatever you can, one, to get as many people registered to vote, and then inform them on the issues. And so we have a few things coming up that we're going to be doing that for sure. Trying to, whether it be mailing out information to our members, whether it's participating in events that are already happening. We're working with the Portsmouth Omegas on the event right now to where to be a social event, but also an opportunity for us to inform voters on issues. We have an event coming up, as I mentioned, for young people in the age range of 18 to 25 to inform them on issues. It's going to be like a social networking mixer, but also it's going to be focused on informing voters. Any way that we can do it, going to churches. We just came from New Bethel yesterday, certainly where, Dr. Whitaker was brilliant in making sure that we as a community are addressed on what's really happening in downtown. And so we're anything that we can do, we're doing it. So we're partnered with Divine Nine. We've partnered with, we certainly would love to partner with the Alumni Association at Norcom for sure. The work that you all do is amazing. And then other organizations. So we're open to it. So anything that we can get our hands on, we're doing it to inform our voters and then get them in the game.
How is it doing? How are you going with I'm guilty, so I apologize. But how is NAACP doing with membership now? Because you have a lot of individuals who feel as though the NAACP is outdated, no longer needed. Why should I pay a membership fee? How addressing the fact of keeping the membership active within the NAACP organization?
That that's the challenge, and certainly we've had very, very good membership trends in our branch. Very good. Matter of fact, our membership chair, Ms. Carol, I know most of you probably know her.
She's awesome because she's on me, and I have to do better.
That's right. No, you're fine. Yeah, she's actually won awards for how she manages membership and then our increase in membership. So we've done very well with it. But the real key, as you said, Lee, is how do you get from just joining to being active, and what does it mean to be active, and how we're doing that? And that's been an ongoing challenge that we've had. Most branches around the country have, but certainly in Portsmouth we've had, because you can have hundreds and hundreds of members on the road, but not many are actively involved. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is send this message. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what you can do. Anything that you have availability for, we need, right? If you are an older member and you might not be able to get out there in the community as much, that's fine. You can help us do phone banking. You can help us call when we're working on the issue. You can help us in other ways from your availability. If you're younger and you want to be more out, active, involved in what's going on, from being actively involved in the streets and stuff like that, we have that available for you, right? We want you to have, even if you have 15, 20 minutes, we can use that 15 to 20 minutes, right? So one of the things that we've had to do was stop the, because sometimes you can, older individuals can say, oh, the younger people don't respect enough. And then the younger people say, well, oh, the older generation may not have my style per se, but it's a merger of the two, right? We have to respect our elders. That's super important in our culture, and we have to do that more and better. And at the same token, we have to give room for the youth to come through. Sometimes we hold on to the keys too long, myself included. been president for 10 years now. I'm old now. I can't believe I'm the senior president of the area now, which is but yeah, it's a challenge for sure. And one of the things that we're trying to do is create that environment. It doesn't matter who you are, what age you are, we need you in the movement, right? But then also coming up with more ways to engage with members, right? Email, apps, social media, while at the same time understanding that a lot of members still want to have that phone call, still want to have those in-person meetings. So we're still trying to find a balance, but it's an ongoing challenge for sure. You're right. But this organization is definitely needed. And I tell people all the time that you may not, even when you're not paying attention to what the organization is doing, the organization is still working. And that's certainly the case for the NAACP and our branch.
Saying that, how does a person that wants to get involved contact you, join, or get financial help? How does that person do that?
Oh, you mean if so somebody wanted to join the NAACP but they didn't have the funds or something like that?
No. How they either want to join or they're inactive or whatever. They want to give you some financial help. How do they send a check to you? How do they join? Or
yeah, that's easy. We'll set checks very easy. Yeah, I can tell you exactly who you call. You just reach out to our membership chair. We'll take any funds that you can. You can reach out to us at naacpportsmouth@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us on social media. We'll definitely make sure we get connected if you want to support the movement, whatever way you can. And like you said, that's a good point, Colonel. Some people are like, hey, listen, I might not be able to get out there as much. I may not have the time, but I want to financially support. We'll take it. And definitely make sure that we use those funds for what we're doing. And then last point on that is, a lot of stuff, we may not display enough, and that's on our part. I tell the organization we have to tell our story better too. But like recently this year, we sent young people to our national convention. And we had young talent in Portsmouth that went and did very well, won a lot of awards, and 3 of them came back with $10,000 scholarships, right? That our branch was able to send them, and their parents said, hey, our child would have never been able to get there. We couldn't afford it. We won't be exposed to it, but because of donations, like you said, Colonel, people who give, and they may not be active, but they give, we were able to do that, right? So even though you may not be boots on the ground, but there's still ways to help the movement.
And James, I want to ask, in the name NAACP, the C stands for colored, and I think over the years people always thought the colored part meant blacks or African Americans, and intentionally it was for I believe initially for all people of color, and now we use the term people of color. And it could be now the NAACP, people of color. But how attractive is the NAACP as far as other people of color? Are we attracting other people of color and locally or nationally, to it, or a lot of people still look at it as a totally black organization, even though a lot of our issues, stem around that.
Absolutely. So yeah, you're right. In your point, Brett Overton, was, the NAACP was formed in 1909 to address lynchings across the country, across the world. And we know that lynchings in America were the victims of lynching were the black community. So it started originally from that. And as we evolved throughout the years, it now is and we call it's a multicultural, multiracial organization, right? Where people from different backgrounds, from, let's say, the Latino Hispanic community, from even the Asian community, who have experienced racism, bigotry, and discrimination, whether that be from social environments, political environments, economic environments, are involved with the NAACP on a national level, and certainly there's involvement at our branch as well in that. So we don't practice discrimination at all. We fight against it, but we certainly don't practice it. And so it is an organization for all groups, despite your background. But certainly, we are going to always be true to our origin to address what's happening in the Black community because of generational wrongs that have been done that still need to be righted today. So certainly our focus is, on our community, but there's people from all type of backgrounds that engage in that same work and want to see progress and solutions for our community. Because what I've always said is, when you address our community and the issues that we've been fighting for and I've been victim of, it will help to better the community for all, right? When we're addressing the issues that have happened for years in the Black community. So certainly it's individuals who are from different backgrounds are involved in NAACP at every level, national, state, and local.
And one other question, I see that Dr. Mark Whitaker is watching, and you mentioned earlier about his involvement, his church's involvement with it. And NAACP at one time was, all the meetings were in churches and things like that. Are you still getting that mass church support that you used to get and that was very necessary back in the day? Or is it really, necessary? I know, New Bethel is involved with the NAACP, but what about other churches?
Absolutely. Definitely New Bethel is definitely a pillar ministry that has not only, and I want to give a second just to talk about them because New Bethel supports the organization, not only the things that Dr. Whitaker represents in our community, him and Dr. Ingrid Whitaker, but also the ministry itself. And they support our organization, the branch, 100%. So definitely, they are a pillar, not only locally on how to support, but nationally. So we're so appreciative to them for that. But there's other churches as well that have and pastors who contact us, want to be involved. I know like places, organizations like Third Baptist Church who've always been so supportive of our branch. I mean, I can go down a list of churches, but certainly we need to continue to improve that relationship because you're right. The origins of it, the church was headquarters for the civil rights movement. It was where we would go to be able to meet safely, right? In a lot of cases, even you saw things in history like the bombing of the 4 little girls, whose that anniversary came up recently, where even the civil rights movement was in the church, and that's why they tried to attack the church. But the origins has always been there, and we have to continue to improve that relationship. But in Portsmouth, we have a lot of support from pastors. Again, it can improve for sure, and that's on everybody's part, the NAACP's part, and on the church's part. But we have to make sure that we're keeping them informed, right? Keeping them involved. Whether it used to be, I know Leah probably can talk to it better than I can. It used to be where we would do monthly mailers, and send it to the churches. One of the things that we're trying to get back to is having a NAACP representative present during the announcements at the church, so that people are informed, or at least give them some information about what's going on in the community with the NAACP. So it's definitely supportive, and a lot of pastors and churches have been supportive, but it can always improve because that's really the nucleus of the movement, is the Black church.
And James, my focus is always on the youth, and that's where my heart is and has been and will continue to be. A lot of the youth don't realize about your AXO program. I think, could you express a little bit about that AXO program? Because we have a lot of talented youth in Portsmouth who could participate. But I know that when I was speaking to some youth about AXO, they didn't know about AXO. So maybe you can share a little information on the AXO program. Are you frozen? Oh, I'm sorry.
Absolutely. 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 So AXO is a program that's sponsored by our national office, in which they want to get Black talent from around the country, and display that at our national convention. And it's an opportunity for us to harness Black brilliance in our community and then support it financially and otherwise, and put it on and make sure that we have a stage in which we can highlight the brilliance in our community, and like you said, Leah, with our youth, right? AXO is a program that takes people from early age ranges and then goes up to, I believe it's once they graduate high school, and even some cases they still do it in early parts of their college experience. But it's an opportunity for us to take talent from our communities, whether that be in the arts, whether that be in technology. And so ACTSO stands for Afro Academic Cultural Technology and Scientific Olympics, ACT-SO, ACTSO. And it's really us taking the youth, the next generation, and promoting it at a large level so that our community can support it on a national basis. And this year, as I mentioned earlier, we were able to send quite a few Portsmouth Public School students to our national AXO competition, where they were able to compete and did extremely well. I mean, we had it, and I'm thinking of Hannah Page, who is at I believe Hannah is at I think she was at Churchland, a graduate of Churchland, and she is one of our AXO champions. So it's a program where you can actually allow your children, your youth, to be involved, and then we can display their talent. Singing, like I said, technology, science. We had one young leader who developed an app that went to the AXO competition and competed, put his app up for. We had people, painters, all kind of talent. So it's a huge program that we support. Every year, our branch sends Portsmouth Public School students to our national convention to compete.
Before, I know we're getting to the end of the show, but I just want to recircle back to where we talked about what the C stood for in NAACP when we said colored. And I think the emphasis is not out there as far as colored, meaning anybody of color. And then so when we talk about the other side of the Heritage Project 2025, and now their general, Donald Trump, tries to separate different segments of colored people. He talks about the Haitians eating dogs. Then he tries to separate it. If you saw this history, he talks about the Asians or the China, and he says it was the China flu or COVID that was out destroying America. Or when he talked about this Hispanics, the Mexicans are sending their drug dealers and the rapists and the mental folks from mental institutions, separating them out. Or for the Africans from all these S-hole, when he was president, Africans from these S-hole countries. So if you look at it, if you were part of that C, meaning colored people, anybody of color, they are going to come for you. It's only a matter of time for you'll be separated, because if I can divide you away from the umbrella of C, colored or people of color, I can come at you and destroy you and send you and do harm to you under the guise of the other. And then but you'll also notice that at no time that they ever talk about the blue-eyed European descent folks from Europe that have overstayed their visas or overstayed their work permits, and talk about deportating them.
Mm-hmm.
You tell me when they ever said that. And so it also gives a summarization. It's this whole others conversation is deeply rooted in racism, where we hardly ever want to say, hey, Mr. Trump and the rest of your folks are racist. Well, actually, if you look at the polls, it's so tight, it's almost 50-50. Half America is a racist. So what say you?
Yeah. And it, Donald Trump, as I said earlier, is really the lightning rod, the Wizard of Oz behind behind racism in America today. And certainly he has deployed tactics to perpetuate that racist agenda. Whether some of the examples that you pointed out in other ways that he's, done that. I remember when he said he told the 4 congresswomen to go back to where they came from, things of that nature. And not only what he just says out of his mouth, but it's what he does.
Yeah.
Right. It's what they do, and I want to make this very clear too, that racism doesn't have party affiliation. Right. And I want to make that very clear. We have to be very careful that, we are putting the fight against racism in America in one, political party. Certainly there, we've seen a lot of the effort behind one particular party that we're fighting against, but certainly racism goes beyond that. Mm-hmm. And so we got to be very clear about what our fight is, and which is what the NAACP focuses on. You may not know that you're perpetuating racism, right? But you may not think that you're, a racist, or that but you might be uninformed, right? You might not know, or in some cases it is intentional. But we believe racism is when one group of people hold a disproportionate share of wealth, power, and resources, right? So you may be someone that, owns a business, right? And you may be doing things that on a discriminatory basis that you weren't aware of, right? That perpetuating racism. So we have to be very clear about Donald Trump's role in it, but also that racism in America is also institutional. It's about policy. It's about procedure. It's about internal processes. It's about hierarchical structure. It's about being able to have everybody have opportunity. We see what's going on now with the whole DEI conversation, diversity, equity, inclusion, where a lot of people want to roll that back now because, it's gone too far. We're getting a little too equitable. It's getting too focused on it, and so we got to be very clear about that and how they do it, right? You can be the nicest person in the world and still perpetuate racism, right? And so we have to be very, very clear on that. We're focused on the movement itself, right? And certainly Donald Trump is a lightning rod for it. He says things that people, I was going to say fearful of saying, but now you got people that are just saying it now. Yeah. He's giving rise to people just to be open and just to say it and deal with the consequences. So, we have to stay on the battlefield. It is definitely still alive and well. And as somebody who I respect so well, Bishop Whitaker, who's passed away now, who was certainly a leader in the civil rights movement in so many ways. This is Dr. Whitaker's father, Bishop Whitaker. I remember we had a service at New Bethel, and he told me, he said, Brother Boyd, the Pettus Bridge still remains. And I think he was telling me the work still remains. We have to be vigilant in our community, the Black community, to make sure we're addressing the issues that we've suffered with for generations.
So true, so true. But we're at the end of the hour time, so I'll leave it up to you. Or Leah, do you have anything to add?
I just wanted to say, thank you, Colonel. I just want to say, James, thank you so very much for agreeing to come on Portsmouth Coffee Talk. I think you have a wealth of knowledge that needs to be shared. And when NAACP is engaged in programs, I encourage you to come back on to Portsmouth Coffee Talk and share those things, because the community they need to know what's taking place. They need to be made aware. Sometimes we just live under a rock somewhere. We don't pay attention to everything that's taking place. But I just appreciate all that you've done and all that you will continue to do. And we do invite you anytime there's something that's going on that the public need to be made aware of. We invite you to come back and share that information with the public. And once again, I'm just so proud of you and the things that you're accomplishing and the things that you're doing. And just look forward to the greatness that's set forth for you in the future. So thank you so very much, James. And that fiery speech you gave the other night, like I said, man, I thought I had Martin Luther King Jr. sitting up in here. But it was you brought the fire to the house Saturday night. So.
I appreciate that. Thank you for everything. Thank you for your work. Thank you. So thankful for you and Robert Overton and Colonel for all that you do. And thank you for informing our citizens. We need it.
Okay. Yep. Thanks everybody for watching. And thank you, James Patrick. Oh, go ahead.
James, I just want to say, we need to get away from so much being entertained to being made aware. We follow when it's being entertaining. If it's entertaining, it would be 99 million people up here. But when you're giving out information, we tend to shut down. So we're going to continue to give that information until they open up their ears and they listen. And once again, James, if you miss it today, you can go back on YouTube, on James' Facebook page, or on my Facebook page, and you can relive this whole interview. Thanks, James, for allowing me to do that.
Yes, that's our purpose here, and we continuously push out our videos, after the live version, but we like the live version. And James, thanks again on short notice and coming in. You've always been a champion as far as coming when we ask, and we're going to have you back because there's plenty more to talk about. And just like I say, just like Leah said, it's not entertainment. We're here to inform and learn ourselves. We're learning ourselves, even though we've been around for a while. So every guest that comes on, we learn a little bit more from them. And we hope that we can feed them with a little bit of knowledge as well as our viewers. We want them to make sure. So make sure you share, this content with your family, friends, foes, and everybody else. But anyway, I'd like to do this quick shout out to my brother, my big brother, Ronald Lee Goodrich. His birthday is today. Our birthdays are like 6 days apart, but I turned 70 and he turned 73, and he's also a cancer survivor, a recent cancer survivor. So shout out to you, Ronald Lee. I took the liberty of doing that since I have the mic. But anyway, thanks everybody. And remember, Portsmouth Coffee Talk is here for our voice, our community, and our future. See you next time.